It's May and it's Giro d'Italia time. We're going to run you through all of the key stages and all the key riders to watch out for. But first up, let's run through that route. So a few key stats for the 105th edition of the race are that we've got 6 mountain stages, 6 hilly stages, 5 sprint stages and 2 time trials. However, those 2 time trials cumulatively add up to about 26 kilometers of racing, which is an incredibly small amount and actually is the smallest amount since 1967. The race starts off in Hungary and then it does conclude in the Dolomites. So there's going to be plenty of climbing and some incredibly big days in the saddle. So the first key stage comes up at stage 4 and that's when they're really introduced to some proper climbing. Now that one goes up Mount Etna, doesn't it? So we're really going to start to see a bit of a GC sort out.
Yeah, interesting day that day because not only is it their first big test coming very early in the race, they've just got off a plane down from Hungary. So early transfer day, rest day on that first Monday, and they're straight up Mount Etna on the Tuesday. And it's often key. It's a big wide road at the top. If it's a headwind, can keep things together. It's not your typical twisty hairpin climb, but it's still a big day, and there'll be some riders who haven't got their mountain legs ready for stage 4. It's very early.
I guess on that stage, we're not really going to be seeing kind of any significant time gaps in terms of really working out who's going to be leading the race. But I think at that point, we could potentially be seeing who's not going to be winning the race. We could potentially be seeing who's coming in quite weak.
Yeah, or just someone who leaves themselves a lot of work to do over the next 2 weeks. Someone will lose time there because they won't have their climbing legs on, I suspect. And then, it leaves them with a lot to do over the next 2 weeks. Doesn't mean they're out of the race, but it makes it very difficult for them. So that's always interesting to see how they cope with that.
Now our next key stage is going to be stage 9 and that goes up the blockhouse and that's a pretty brutal climb and it's been used in the Giro quite a lot.
Yeah, popular climb in the Giro, it's brutal and there were 2 other big climbs on that day as well, so it's a really, really tough stage. So big sort out that day. Whoever goes into pink at the end of that day is already going to be in a very strong position, I would have thought.
So after stage 9, the next key stage is stage 15, which looks like a pretty mammoth day. We've got 3 climbs in that day, all within the final 80 kilometres of that stage. But it is before a rest day. So do you reckon we might see some people kind of going a little bit deeper in the hope that they can recover and then go again on 16?
Yeah, hopefully. But of course, this is 15 days of racing now in their legs, so they'll be getting tired as well. It is a big day and it's the start of the massive end week that we always see at the Giro. It always finishes in that northeastern corner of the country where all the mountains are. And once you get to the end of stage 15, you know, really, you might get a rest day the next day, but there's no let up for the rest of the week. It's brutal, as always. This is when the final sort out of the general classification will start to happen. It starts that Sunday and it will continue throughout that last week.
And that's it. I mean, then going into stage 16, you've got nearly 5,440 metres of climbing. It's a big day in the saddle. So again, that's going to be absolutely brutal. And there's 4 climbs on stage 16 as well. So again, at that point, it's going to be an absolute war between the GC.
Yeah, it's sort of profile that makes you feel tired just looking at it. It's brutal. And that is the last week of the Giro. So whoever's got the legs that week, you know, we were talking about Mount Etna earlier, even if someone who's lost time there, the last week is so brutal that everything can be thrown up. And of course, you've got the weather. You can hit really bad weather and you can have a day that just changes, turns the whole race on its head. So yeah, there's so many things that can happen at the Giro. That's why it's such a fantastic race to watch.
That's true. And then coming on to stage 20, so your penultimate stage, but again, it's the last day in the mountains, in the Dolomites. It looks absolutely brutal, but you've got 3 really famous climbs on there. And then, yeah, you are finishing on a summit finish as well. So
yeah, I think like at the Tour, that the person who finishes that penultimate day in pink has pretty much got it sewn up. If there's seconds in it, maybe you can look to that final TT, but I doubt it very much. I think whoever pulls on the pink jersey on the podium here is your winner.
So sprint stages. I'm going to bring up stage 1 because when you look at the profile, it's incredibly flat. Now, it does kick up towards the end. What are your thoughts on this? Who do you reckon is going to be in contention for it?
This seems to have Mathieu Van Der Poel written all over it for me. He will be my favourite to go into the first pink jersey, and you know, chances are he probably won't last the 3 weeks. So he'll be looking to get in the action early, as he did last year's Tour de France. Absolutely. Spice it up a bit. I think that looks good for him. But any other sort of good classics riders, even a Caleb Ewan may be able to hold on. Not sure. It really does depend just how severe that little kick up to the line is, because it's hard to tell from that profile. It looks quite tricky, but you never really know until you get on it, and the run into it can, if there's a dead turn at the bottom, then it changes things again. And often you don't know that until someone actually drives the course, because a turn into a climb can change just where they put the barriers. So it's really hard to know this far out, and a lot of the riders won't know until a member of their staff has driven it and filmed it and fed back to them.
That's it. And I think we can always get a lot of confidence from Van Der Poel, knowing that actually he's very good at kind of weaving his way through those trickier situations and then dealing with steep gradients when they do come up. So I think it's, in some ways, stage one is probably his to lose.
Yeah, I think so.
And then actually, going on to stage two, I think because it is only a 9.2 kilometre time trial, he's not bad in a TT. So he could potentially hold on to the jersey for a couple of stages.
Something that short suits the punchier riders.
Yeah.
Even some of the sprinters you'll see do very good times in a time trial that short. Can depend on how twisty it is, how technical it is. But yeah, I think chances are whoever takes a Maglia Rosa on stage one, it will hold on to it at stage two.
And then that brings us on to stage three, which is undoubtedly a sprint stage because it is pan flat. There's a couple of little bumps in there, but it really is flat. So that one, again, that could suit the likes of the pure sprinters. So the Caleb Ewans, the Mark Cavendishes, the Vivianis of the world. I think that one's going to be highly contested.
Yeah, I think this is the day the sprinters will have circled in their road book. They'll be there or thereabouts on stage one, but if they lose it, I don't think they'll be too worried because they won't expect it. This is the day, because this is one of 3 pan flat stages in the race. So this is the first one that all the pure bunch sprinters will be looking at and thinking this is my chance for a stage win. With time bonuses, there's potential to take the leader's jersey as well, but depends what they've done. Obviously, the first 2 days. So yeah, it'll be quite nervy, I think, coming into that. Nothing like we see on the Tour de France early stages, but it'll still be quite nervy because all the bunch sprinters want to get that first win in their legs. They are beasts who work on confidence, and that first win is what they're all looking for. So yeah, this will be a frantic finish.
And then on to stage 6, which is our next sprint stage. We've got a bit of a lump early on, but I think it's fair to assume that they're all going to regroup after that first initial climb. And with the intermediate sprints that are going through there, I think it's going to be a proper bunch sprint as well. I don't think the breakaway is really going to have a chance on this because it is so flat. And again, it's just going to be one for the pure sprinters, isn't it?
Yeah, that early climb is where the break will get away and establish a lead, unless there's a sprinter who really wants to get that intermediate sprint, that first one, which is just over the top of it. But it depends because there is another one later on. But yeah, this looks like a traditional breakaway group, gets brought back for the bunch sprint.
Yeah. So next up, we're going to look at stage 8, and I'm actually going to pull in stage 10 as well because they've got some interesting looking profiles, and it's actually hard to judge how they're going to play out in reality because on stage 8, for example, we've got a 19-kilometre city circuit that runs around Naples. It's incredibly lumpy, but because it's a circuit, I think it's fair to assume that actually they probably will stay together to some extent. And it doesn't look like it's too bad. I think, again, this could work really well for your kind of classics rider.
Yeah, the circuit stages, which are fairly rare, they pretty much always end in a bunch sprint because you see the finish a few times. So the sprinters know what's coming and they'll know how to sprint, and therefore they'll want to go for it because they know what's coming and they can put their team in the right place and get organised. So that looks like a sprint. Although the profile does look lumpy, but they're pretty small. It's all day up and down, but they're pretty small. Same for stage 10, a flat start and then into the lumps and bumps at the end. But again, if you've got a sprinter who is very keen for a win, maybe hasn't pulled one off so far and needs one, maybe before they go home or maybe before the big mountains hit, they'll be putting their team on the front and getting them to chase because there's a lot of good sprinters in this is Giro, and I don't think there's any shortage of teams who will be pulling for their sprinter over those stages, especially early on before the mountains hit and sort of you start losing riders and they get more tired.
That's it. Well, even with stage 10, even if the sprinters aren't lucky, they're then greeted with stage 11, which is pan flat, and it's a 200-kilometre stage with 480 metres of climbing. So, I'm pretty sure I've seen, hilly
around the velodrome, I think.
Yeah, basically. It's incredibly flat, that one. So, That one, I mean, it's probably not going to be a stage to watch. It's probably going to be one just to find out on Instagram who won.
Tune in for the last 10k.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on to stage 18, which, I mean, is going to be incredibly fast because the whole stage is essentially downhill. There is 570 metres of climbing, not a lot at all really. There's a couple of little lumps and bumps, but it's not going to be enough to kind of blow everything apart. And then you're still left with a sizable chunk towards the end, which again is downhill, which is going to pull everyone together, and it's just going to mean a fast finish, isn't it?
Yeah, all you're looking at here is which sprinters are still left in the race at this stage. It's already gotten quite hard. They'll have some big stages in their legs. So you're looking for the riders who aren't going to the Tour de France because they would have gone home by now. Yeah. You're looking for the Italian sprinters like Viviani who would want to finish, and whoever's in the points jersey, Ciclamina jersey. They obviously have to honour that and keep going. So you are probably down to just a few pure bunch sprinters still left in the race at this time. So, a chance for a second tier sprinter to have their day, really.
So coming on to those sprinters who could be contesting those stages, we've got some decent names in there actually. So we've got Mark Cavendish, we've got Fernando Gaviria, who has historically won that points jersey at the Giro. We've got Caleb Ewan, Viviani, yet to be properly confirmed because Ineos haven't confirmed their complete roster just yet. We've got Nizzolo, Magnus Cort. I'm not expecting him to kind of be one of those pure sprinters, but he could sneak a win in there. Arnaud Demar from FDJ and then Ceesbol as well. So there's quite a few decent names in there. It's a good mix, but who do you reckon is going to come away with the gold?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, we'll be looking for Mark Cavendish to add to his wins. He hasn't. I don't think he's ridden the Giro for
quite a while.
It's
been a couple of years, a few years.
But he's got a few stages, and whether or not he will have the Tour de France in mind, he will need to be winning stages. He's already won a couple of really good races this year, so we know he's got the form.
Yeah.
We know he's a confidence sprinter. Once he's won one, you expect him to get another one, maybe two. So he'll be top of that tree, really. Van Der Poel will make things very hard for the pure sprinters. That's what he's good at doing.
Yes.
So he will mess things up. But yeah, Gaviria, Viviani, Ewan, Ceesbol, Demar, even Zolo, they're all good enough to win. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think there's enough to share. I'd expect a few wins. Well, a win for 3 or 4 of them at least. I don't know.
Definitely, and that's the thing. I mean, if any of them are able to hang on into those latter stages of the race, then there is always stage 18 that's up for grabs. So I think, that could potentially be some kind of low-hanging fruit for them to grab hold of. So do you think there's any outside hopes for those sprints? Any other contenders we should be thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps the rider I'm most looking forward to seeing at the Giro is Binyam Girmay from Wanty. Just a phenomenal classics campaign. Very short, E3, 5th, and then winning Gent-Wevelgem, a real surprise winner. And he'll be riding his first Grand Tour. So he had an incredible start to the season, but he's had a big break. He went back to his family in Eritrea, so he hasn't raced for a while. So he might take a little while to get into the race. But I think this is his first chance to go up against a lot of big name bunch sprinters in a big race.
Yes.
And when you've got the pressure on you, the TV cameras on you. And you've got to perform at that level. So it can be really fascinating to see what he does. Because, he's not built like a bunch sprinter, but as you saw from World Championships last year and then from Gent-Wevelgem, he has an amazing turn of speed. So it's going to be great to watch him go through his first Grand Tour.
I guess actually even being just on the Intermarché squad, and because he's not a big name, there won't be as many eyes on him. And compared to, say, the Cavs and the Caleb Ewans of the world, he can kind of fly under the radar a little bit more and kind of evade some of that attention, which, again, should actually help.
Yeah, he's 22. There's absolutely no pressure on him.
Yeah.
If he doesn't win, it really doesn't matter for him at this stage.
But if he does, it'll be headlines everywhere.
Yeah, it'll be a great story to have an African rider winning Grand Tour stages would be great.
Absolutely. So on to the GC contenders and the ones that are going to be vying for that pink jersey. My first one that I'm going to bring up is Joao Almeida. He's had an incredibly good start to the year and he had a really good 2021 as well. He finished the Volta Ciclista Catalunya, ending up 3rd on GC, and he took a stage and he finished 4th at the Giro in the 2020 edition. So I think he's got a good bit of history there. He's a young lad. I think he's an incredibly hot favourite to win.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a young rider, still only 23, so he still actually qualifies for the young rider jersey.
Yeah.
But the Giro is really the race that's defined his career. He came out of nowhere in 2020 as a 21, maybe 22-year-old. That was the one that Teo won. It was at the end of the year, and he held the pink jersey for about a week and a half there, and no one had ever heard of him before. That was his first year as a pro, I believe. Yeah. Finished 4th in the end because he did fade, unsurprisingly. Came back in 21, finished 6th, and yeah, it's very much the race that he favours. But he's a bit in this realm at the moment of Mikel Landa, where he always has a bad day in a Grand Tour, but that's probably just his age. As he grows more mature, more experienced, he will get better at putting together a Grand Tour, which doing the right thing day after day after day, which is incredibly difficult. So I would expect to see him on the podium, all being well.
Absolutely. So next up, I want to bring up Pello Bilbao. He's had a really good start to the year, actually. He's done a lot of racing, so he's got a fair few race days in the legs already. He did clinch a stage and ended up 4th on GC at Tour of the Alps very recently. However, maybe it's his teammate, who's at the moment yet to be confirmed, Damian Caruso. Obviously, he finished 2nd last year. He could potentially do incredible things. Between them, there's a lot of firepower there if they were to both go.
Yeah, I mean, Bilbao, 32, seems to be coming into the best years of his career. He's a bit of a nearly man in the Grand Tours. He's very, very consistent, and in the shorter stage races, he's almost rarely at the top 10, but doesn't really hit the heights and doesn't really have what it takes to beat the big names out there. But he's always there or thereabouts. So riders like that are always sort of primed and ready to take the opportunities. Bahrain, one of the best teams out there at the moment, winning across the board from the classics to the stage races. We know they will be strong at the Giro. They will be there to support a leader, and again a team who will be very, very focused on a podium finish at the end, expecting it to be Bilbao. Could be Caruso, not sure. But yeah, you'll be seeing those jerseys at the front of the race. Without doubt, you're seeing them at the front of every race at the moment. So
well, that's it. But I think that's the thing, is that might not be the top step, but there's a good chance it will be a step.
Yeah.
And then on to Ineos. Obviously, kings of the Grand Tour, or once were. Richard Carapaz, previous winner. Surely he's got to be podiuming, at least. If not winning, because, he's been going well. He hasn't raced too much this year, but you can't count him out.
Yeah, he's probably the red-hot favourite, previous winner. Ineos have won the Giro 3 times in the last 4 years. They have a rich history in this race now. The cynic might say they've given up on the Tour de France while Pogacar's around. So they're sending their strongest rider to the Giro. It's an incredibly important race for them. They have a very strong team around him. They've got a long list at the moment, but even the long list looks incredibly strong. They'll be ditching a couple of those riders to get the final team. But Carapaz, we know, can go deep. Lives at altitude. The mountains are absolutely no problem to him whatsoever. Won the race before, 3rd at last year's Tour. Olympic champion. I think he's your red-hot favourite. So British fans will be, of course, looking to Simon Yates, Team Bike Exchange. Not having a great year this year, the team, but this is Simon's race, really. From 2018, when he held on to pink for so long before losing it at the last to Chris Froome, on the podium last year, slowly getting better and better, more consistent, and he always favours the Giro over the Tour de France. It really is a race that suits his racing style and his temperament. So yeah, our readers will be looking very much to him for another British rider at the top of that podium, I think.
That's it. He's won 4 stages of the Giro, so he knows how to do it. He finished 2nd on the GC at this year's Paris-Nice. So he's clearly, he's going okay. He's going pretty well. So I think there's every chance that he could potentially perform well at the Giro as well. So do you think there's anyone else worth mentioning, or anyone else worth thinking about? Yes,
we've got Miguel Angel Lopez, Astana. He will be up there, a strong rider. Great climber. That last week, will really suit him. It often suits those riders who come from altitude, that sort of background, just because they spend a whole week almost at altitude, either sleeping or going over the high passes. So that really helps. But then I think most interesting, you've got the return of Tom Dumoulin. Jumbo-Visma are not putting the pressure on him. He's certainly not going there to win. But this is, I think, his performance at this year's Giro will tell us whether or not he's going to contest another Grand Tour in his career. If he can get a good top 10, a stage win or two, then I think he could be on the comeback for a couple more years as a GC contender. And you want to see, a rider that talented, that strong. We want to see him at the front of bike races, at the front of Grand Tours. So it's going to be really interesting to see it, and not just whether or not he dives off the side of the road to answer the call of nature. I think it'd be great to see him back at the front of a Grand Tour in the mountains.
So a couple of Brits I want to talk about very briefly. young Ben Tullett, and actually youngest rider in this whole race so far. It's going to be really interesting because obviously this is his first Grand Tour. He had a decent year last year. How do you think he's going to do, and what kind of role do you think he's going to play within that Ineos squad?
Yeah, he's only 20 years old, and already this season we've seen him doing some great turns on the front on the climbs. He's very much a climber, he's a very little rider. So I think he'll be perhaps saved for the climbs. I don't think he'll be the last mountain domestique with Carapaz, maybe second or third last. And then, you know, the thing is, if you go into Grand Tour with an Ineos jersey on your back, you need to be ready to defend the lead on the final day, which is a big ask for someone of his age. Yeah. So really interesting to see how he gets on through the race, how he develops. You know, all the signs from the early season stage races are good, really good for him. So that's yeah, interesting one to follow.
So it's prediction time. What are you going to say? Okay, we'll start off with pink jersey, Maglia Rosa. Who do you think is going to be taking home that win?
I will go with Carapaz. Bit boring, bookie's favourite. I think a rider of his standard with that team behind him. Yeah, I think a safe bet.
That is a very safe bet, actually. I'm going to go slightly left field, and I'm going to go with João Almeida. I think he could potentially, I don't know, he just seems to be really in form at the moment, and I think he could potentially just be a bit of an interesting choice. Points jersey, purple jersey. Who do you think?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Who's going to make it all the way through to the end?
That's it. It's not necessarily the fastest sprinter.
No, it's not. It's a sprinter who's going to be able to manage themselves through those mountains. I think I might go for Nizzolo from Israel.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I think if Viviani does go, I'm gonna pip Viviani for that jersey, actually. And then young rider, who do you think?
Well, if you're right for the podium, it's going to be Almeida because he still qualifies for that jersey. Yeah. So hard to see past it because he as long as he finishes, he's going to finish up high. So he'll be in that jersey for sure, I think.
Absolutely, and obviously I agree. So there we have it. Those are the stages we think are going to be the ones to watch, and also the riders who we think are going to be contesting for all of those wins. Do follow across on Cycling Weekly for full race coverage and all the stories as they happen. Let us know down in the comments your predictions of who you think's going to win. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and we'll see you again very soon.